Hey guys, Samuel Larsen here. I wanted to make a video about conversion copywriting for e-commerce stores because it's one of those things that the people constantly get wrong, and basically people don't really know how to craft their value propositions. They don't really know what their customers are thinking. They don't really know how to set up the text. So there's a lot of improvement for a lot of people here. And texts are one of those things that many people don't really spend all that much time into because you are general more concerned about how your ads are doing. That seems like more tangible. Also the design seems more tangible. So texts are often overlooked. However, they definitely shouldn't, because texts are one of those easy things that you can just change without a developer, without doing any kind of big effort. And copywriting is really about how do we get an inside look into customer's brain. Because once we start selling the way customers are thinking, we are actually, in a sense, joining the conversation inside the customer's mind. And if we can then tweak our message according to what they're actually thinking, what is going on in there, we'll be so much more successful. It's not even close. Now, in order to really understand the customer's thinking, we need to think of brain science a little bit. Now, I'm not getting too deep into it, but we need to think that there's basically 3 layers to the brain. We have the old brain, the midbrain, and the new brain. So people have evolved from these very primal animals into more of conscious beings. However, we're still very emotional. We feel strongly about things, etc. So we have, in a sense, 2 kinds of thinking. And Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize-winning scientist, have written extensively about this. But we have the fast and slow thinking. Now, fast one is the old brain. That's our reactionary brain part. That's the animal instinct part in us. And this is where the first impressions happen. So first impressions are always evoking emotion. So it's all happening in the old brain, the lizard brain, the faster brain. And then you have the more detailed impression. This is the new brain, the later evolved brain, the more of a thinking brain. Now, when you wrote your descriptions for products example, you probably wrote them from the new brain. Because when you wrote them, you wanted to be a very use fancy words, etc., be very thorough, explain it logically, etc. However, when people are reading this, they're not on the same mindset. They're actually operating almost from a different language, a different brain frequency than you were when you were carefully drafting that. So we need to take that into account and be able to provoke a little bit of an emotional response sometimes. Stir it up, so to say. So the first challenge, and the challenge that really is with the lizard brain, the old brain, the quick thinker, is to just get people to advance on our site. So when they're landing, they're in a very big risk of bouncing. They're it's very likely that they will bounce within the first seconds. So our goal first is to not have them to bounce. So if we can pass the so-called 10-second test, where you have people that are on your site, on your page for longer than 10 seconds, then it's way more likely that they will actually spend time reading on it, engaging with the content, click on the page, etc. So that's our first challenge. And this challenge is mainly headline driven, and it's mainly evoking a value offering that fits the customer, that the customer would be interested in. And if we can then get them just to stay those first crucial 10 seconds, that is going to really multiply our chances of success. Because it doesn't matter if we are witty, if we are like great at crafting this like highly logical value proposition, if very few people will actually see it. So that is something to definitely consider. Now, when it comes to your site and when it comes to your copy, like, while you don't want to be such a perfectionist that you never get any copy out there, it still all matters. And how do they come to your shop matters. How are they navigating with the site? That matters. And what are they doing there? It all matters. So you need to know your paths. If you have for example, SEO type of site, that path is going to be very different than if you are driving relatively cold traffic from Facebook ads. So you need to know this and craft your value propositions, your copy accordingly. So we need to keep in mind this called like a so-called explanation gap, where our knowledge of our product is actually super high, but people are not on that same level. So if you go super technical, super detailed with your writing, and you assume too much knowledge, people are not going to be able to follow it, and then that like will not be as punchy because of that. So we need to start and like think like where are people on this explanation scale? How much like they even know about the product, and then like craft our message accordingly. And oftentimes we tend to think that it's a linear process because as a logical being, like something happens like A, B, C, D, E type of thing. But when you actually know how websites work, how users behave in there, maybe you've looked at some session recordings, you know that it's almost a loop to get people to buy. So you can expect people to have multiple tabs, etc. And you can expect them to have a lot of distractions. And since that is the case, we need to be able to keep that in mind as well. So people need to have an easy way back, for example. So that's why we wouldn't want to like produce a wall of text and bore people with that. And these kind of buying processes, they're really worthwhile to look at because there's so much to gain from just understanding your visitors. And once you understand this, you can then truly start to understand people, and you can start understanding your customers specifically. Because like, you probably think that your customer's motivation is 100%. Like they're searching for it. You put that offer there, they want to buy. But it's really 100%. So if we think of people as, some people are never going to buy. They're the red light people. Then some people are almost always going to buy. They're the green light people. But most people that are on your offer, they're actually yellow light people. They're not sure. If your offer is great, they'll go and they become green light people. They actually they move ahead to that like buying category. But oftentimes what happens is that the too big of a part of this will actually move into the red light people. So they're actually not going to buy because your offer is not as honed as it could be. So you're actually leaking sales. And with this customer motivation, it could be high, but most of the time it's not. So you need to be able to answer objections. And objections are simply reasons not to buy. So people will start questioning, why here? why now? And why not buy from somewhere else? And these are crucial questions to know and answer to. And if you don't, you are going to be a little bit screwed. If you can't communicate this effectively in the right spot, you're going to lose sales. And a lot of the time people just want it to be like, they want the information to be there. So if it's like somewhere hidden in your FAQ page, you can't assume the motivation to be there to actually go ahead and seek it out. So we want to think of like really two things here. And the first thing to think about is like, what are the biggest needs that the customers are actually looking to solve? So what are their highest motivation? What are their biggest pain points that they're looking to solve? And once you know this, you will be able to write emotional copy. And second thing to really understand is the situation where people are interested in this. And these two pretty much go hand in hand because these needs are always related to a situation. And that's why we need to understand both. Through needs and situations, you can start understanding how you should craft your copy and where you should also focus on, because not all parts of e-commerce sites, they're not created equally. So we need to know where to improve first. And if you're already having a site that is getting traffic, you have Google Analytics set up, that's going to be really easy. So really best place to start is your key landing pages. And it doesn't really matter what they are. Just go ahead and start thinking like, how could we improve these first? And it's very common in copywriting to model successful copy almost like word for word. Great copywriters or copywriters in general, way they practice is that they just hand copy great copy. And oftentimes if you hand copy great copy, your copy actually becomes really good copy. And that's something that oftentimes creates a good set point. And once you have that good set point, you can then maybe craft it a little bit, not too much, and you're going to be good. Now, a couple of things you want to also test is longer and shorter form, and then utilizing perhaps load more button there with a longer form and this kind of stuff. Now, second thing, apart from key landing pages, and oftentimes these are actually the same thing. If you're running a lot of ads, your product descriptions will oftentimes be your key landing pages, so product pages. And for these, start with the most profitable products. A lot of people make the mistake of simply starting with the products that aren't even selling that much. And that's really pointless because you want to focus on your best sellers first. If you can make those best sellers sell even a little bit more, it's going to be a lot easier than getting a product to sell that nobody's interested in the first place. And one huge mistake I got to mention here is that people just copy paste manufacturers' descriptions. And this is what dropshippers do everywhere. So if you have a manufacturer that has written your description, you can pretty much bet that a few other people will have that as well. Now there's a couple of points that it's gonna impact on. First of all, SEO, terrible. It's basically duplicate content in Google's eyes. But also, if you think of this conversion path that users are taking, they're going to have the same descriptions on the other side. And how are we going to stand out then? It's basically a price war. And that's never a good thing. And also, manufacturers, they don't know how to write. They're there just to write facts, etc. So it's gonna be terrible. So I can't really stress product descriptions enough, especially for those bestsellers. Because like, if those aren't handled really, and your customer ends up in the product page after like maybe seeing like a couple other pages, it will be a disappointment. And how would you feel if you like find the awesome product and then there's like a couple of paragraphs of crappy description? It's not gonna really like make you take action right now. It's rather like, I've seen something like this before, right? Then lastly, I would say you want to look at your other top pages, not just the product descriptions or key landing pages, but look at the most popular pages there. Use Google Analytics to see what is popular and also what is working well and what is not working. So a great thing to figure this out is to simply look at page values and page views. So if you can kind of like combine those together and see and prioritize based on that, that's going to be a pretty good thing. Now, lastly, I would say most cart pages, especially on Shopify merchants, it seems, they're completely empty. But this is actually the page where people are having their objections. And this is also the page where you probably should differentiate yourself from the competition as well. Because a lot of people, they add it to the cart just to save it. And then they go ahead, compare a couple of options, and then perhaps check out. So after adding to the cart is where you will have those biggest objections for purchasing. And you want to handle those objections when they're actually occurring. And yeah, like I said, it's gonna be in the cart page most of the time. So that's when people are going to start adding, like asking, do I really need this? Do I want this? Is it really mandatory? And that's where you also need that emotional urgency to really have them and like move them over the buying line. Then of course, you can also test a little bit of different micro copy things on your checkout, but most of the time that's not going to be a very like copywriting heavy text site, because you at that point you probably just want to get out of the way. All right, that was conversion copywriting for e-commerce. I hope you are going to go ahead and implement as many of these tips as possible. And yeah, comment there on the comments if your conversion rates increase. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more e-commerce conversion optimization videos, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks.